Hi, welcome to the Personal History Hub. This video is all about the My Lai Massacre that happened in 1968. So just a bit of background then about what actually happened at My Lai. So the My Lai Massacre happened on the 16th of March 1968 and caused public outrage. A US patrol was carrying out one of the search and destroy missions. If you want to find out more about what search and destroy missions were, watch the video on US tactics. Happened just south of the Khe Sanh during the Tet Offensive. Charlie Company, who was the kind of American division that did this massacre, led by Lieutenant Calley, entered the village of My Lai early in the morning. Intelligence had told them to expect enemy fire and that any people left in the village, as all innocents would be out at market, must be VC. Leaflets have been dropped telling all non-VC to leave the village. However, remember that there's going to be an issue with that because most of the leaflets would be in English, or all of the leaflets would be in English, and most of the Vietnamese villagers couldn't read or understand English at all. There was no enemy fire. Calley and his men rampaged through the village, killing at least 347 men, women, children, and babies. They even killed all the animals and set fire to homes. Some of the women had been raped first, and some of the bodies had the letter C carved into them. All of this was completed within 4 hours. Army war photographer Ron Haberl took photos. They later claimed that they had been ordered to kill everyone in the village. The US military tried to keep news of the massacre quiet. They even boasted of killing 128 Viet Cong fighters. However, 18 months later, in November 1969, the US press found out from a US soldier who had heard about the massacre. Life magazine published details of the massacre, and this sparked an official investigation. 35 different newspapers reported the massacre. Reporters collected eyewitness testimony that over 500 civilians had been killed. So let's have a look at the chain of events that happened then. So immediately after the massacre, the military announced a successful mission, claiming My Lai VC base had been destroyed and 128 VC killed. Soldiers and a helicopter pilot who were there report the massacre to army officials, and chiefs from nearby villages also report to the army the massacre of hundreds of civilians. So the army organised essentially a cover-up. After a quick investigation, it announced 20 accidental civilian deaths during the mission. One soldier, Ron Ridenour, collected eyewitness evidence about the massacre. In April 1969, he sent it to key US politicians to try and expose this army cover-up. A new inquiry began, and on the 15th of July 1970, it reported that the army had covered up what really happened at My Lai. On the 5th of September 1970, Lieutenant Calley was charged with murder. This was the first the public had heard of the massacre. And on the 13th of November 1970, 35 different newspapers reported the massacre. Reporters gave eyewitness testimony that over 500 civilians had been killed, so not the 20 that the army originally said. So what was the aftermath and the outcomes of My Lai? At first, the public were not sure what to believe. The evidence was very confusing and obviously contradictory. Two military inquiries began. The Criminal Investigations Division, known as the CID, conducted an investigation into what happened, and the Peers Inquiry looked into whether the army had organised a cover-up. On the 5th of December, photos taken at My Lai were shown on CBS News. It was no longer possible to deny the killing of significant numbers of civilians. There was a huge public outcry at the massacre and the cover-up itself. The CID found that 347 civilians were killed and that 35 members of Charlie Company should be prosecuted. The Peers Inquiry found that Calley, while ordering the massacre, was following the orders of his superiors, Captain Medina, and that the massacre was known about and covered up at a high level. So the trial of Calley himself. Calley and 10 other officers were formally charged with murdering 109 people. The army placed all of the responsibility on Calley, who was the only one found guilty. He was convicted of killing 22 civilians and given life imprisonment. Many people thought it was unfair for Calley to be the only one to stand trial, as he was simply acting under orders. President Nixon stepped in, and on appeal, he was sentenced to 20 years of hard labour in 1971, although he was actually released in 1974 after serving only 3.5 years under house arrest on his military base. My Lai horrified and shocked US public opinion. It was the clearest evidence that the war was totally going wrong. Many more people began to turn against the war. In November 1969, more than 500,000 anti-war protesters demonstrated in Washington, D.C. It was the largest political protest in US history. That said, a number of Americans either refused to believe the massacre happened or felt it was justified because the villagers were helping the Viet Cong. So it's important to note as well something called Operation Phoenix. So this brought further opposition to the war. And in 1968, the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, set up something called Operation Phoenix. It aimed to identify and arrest at least 3,000 Viet Cong suspects a month. They were to be arrested and forced to reveal further names. In total, they arrested 28,000 suspects, many of whom were tortured. Many were Viet Cong, but a number were actually innocent. The US public were distinctly uncomfortable with such brutal acts. Okay, don't forget to subscribe to the Pre-Snore History Hub.